the Palestinians on the ground.
Okay, Mr. Ramadan, I'm going to come back to you with regards to the Muslim Brotherhood a little bit later on, because there's something I want to ask you which relates to you in a very personal way, but we'll come back to that in about 5 or 10 minutes' time. I want to go to Slavoj Zizek now. Mr. Zizek, I want to compare these scenes that we're seeing in Tahrir Square of 1 million or 2 million people marching for their dignity, for their rights, for democracy, immensely potent scenes, to the scenes that we saw when Saddam Hussein was toppled in Firdaus Square in Baghdad, where that statue came down. And it's difficult to actually tell with regards to the numbers, but there was a wide shot, and there were maybe 50 or 60 people in that square. And is there not a sort of delicious irony here that those pictures of Saddam's statue coming down with 50 or 60 people there were seen as conclusive evidence of the fact that the Iraqi people had had enough of him, whereas we've got these pictures of over 1 million people in Cairo, yet there's still doubt as to whether this is the right thing to happen?
I totally agree with you. I will tell you, I spoke with a journalist who was there, namely when they were pulling down Saddam's statue. You know what he told me? He saw 20 minutes before Americans hiring people to go there and do it. This was not only, it wasn't only that it was just 50 people. This was simply a staged event. United States did almost in a textbook way, to illustrate it in a textbook, did all possible mistakes there, and now they are paying the price. But that's another topic. What I want to say is that, first, all this scare about Islamism, religious tendencies of American people, where, first, let's see who's talking. I read somewhere that in United States, you know, over 30% of the people believe in devil, in ghosts, and so on and so on. So, you know, coming from United States, I don't think they have any right to deplore the religious naivety of the Muslim crowds and so on. Just go to the deep American South, I can guarantee you it's worse than maybe even many Afghanistan villages or whatever. Second point, all this stuff about Islam and so on. I think the choice is not, this is already Western ideology, the choice is not Islam or liberal democracy. There are many wonderful things also going on in Islam. For example, I want to share this wonderful story with you. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Qatar visiting Museum of Islamic Art, and I found there a simple plate with a wonderful old wisdom, which says, an old Iranian philosopher who said, only a foolish man, when he misses a chance, he evokes fate. So here we have a Muslim theology which is much deeper than this Western cliché image, oh, they believe in fate, they follow everything. No, it says you are free to choose. Those who fail, those who don't seize the moment, then they evoke fate to put the blame on some destiny or whatever. So the problem is for me somewhere else. If the true choice is between Muslim fundamentalist theocracy or Western liberalism, we are lost. I think the true tragedy of the Arab nations is the disappearance of, not secular in the sense of irreligious, but secular in the sense of secularity of its demands, justice, freedom, and so on, of this kind of a left, non-fundamentalist, it can be Muslim, but non-fundamentalist left. This, for me, is the true tragedy. And I think that the rise of deplorable fundamentalisms is strictly something which entered the stage, filling in this void of the left. And here I draw a much more radical conclusion. This is not just in Islamist countries. One has to repeat this again and again. For example, Afghanistan. It's presented in Western media as, you know, a crazy ultra-fundamentalist country. Sorry, I'm old enough to remember 40 years ago. Afghanistan was a very open, secularized country with a pro-Western technocratic monarch, strong local communist party. Then we know the story. Communists made the coup d'etat, Soviet Union intervened, American intervenes against. It's as part of this process that Afghanistan was, if I may use this awkward word, was fundamentalized.
Okay.
So for me, again, just to conclude,
Sure.
the choice shouldn't be just Western liberal democracy or Islam fundamentalism. It's crucial to have a strong left. Only this can save us in Arab countries and in the West.
Okay, let's ask Tariq Ramadan then. Many people's fears with regards to the situation in Egypt is that they draw a parallel to Iran 1979. And part of the argument in intellectual circles is to say that, yes, like Egypt, you didn't just have the Islamists revolting against the Shah, you had many others, Marxists, leftists, etc. But what happened is once the Islamists took control, they purged the left and they purged the others. And that's at the nexus of their fear with regards to what possibly might happen in Egypt. Does that have any credibility whatsoever?
No, look, this is once again what I told you. In some Western circles and coming from the Israeli propaganda, it's just to compare this and that and to say, look, this is going to happen. In fact, it's not at all the same situation. And if you look at what happened in Tunisia, this is a revolution following in the footsteps of what happened in Tunisia. And it's the people, 30, young people coming from everywhere saying to the dictator, you, for the last 30 years, you have been running this country, you are preparing your son, we don't want you, we don't want the system. But the leadership is not at all an Islamist leadership. Look at what happened 4 days ago. They were trying to find someone, al-Baradei, and they put themselves behind him, because I think that there is a crisis here, which is really how they are going to deal or to prepare the post-Mubarak era. And this is something which is important. We have to push them to come to an agreement. And for the last 5 years, even the Muslim Brotherhood, they were within the movement and the whole, this alliances that we had before the election, kifaya, saying enough, it's enough. So I think that this is also something which is wrong, even with the history of the Muslim Brotherhood. They are not at all following the footsteps of the Iranian revolution, and their perceptions are not the same, or their understanding. Over the last 30 years, they have been changing a great deal.
Yeah, it's
so
interesting that interesting that you mentioned that they've been changing a great deal, because, I mean, on a personal note, Hassan al-Banna, your grandfather, founded the organization. Do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood, as it stands today, is the embodiment of the organization that he founded all those years ago, and evokes the same spirit and message that he envisaged?
No, I think that there are changes here, and this is also due to history. He was before the repression. He was against the British colonization. He was an anti-colonialist movement dealing with education and working at the grassroots level first, and then came the repression under Nasser's time and regime, and he killed a lot of them. So you had people leaving the Muslim Brotherhood. They became radicalized, and you had people who went into exile, and some of them ended up in Saudi Arabia, others in the West, others in Indonesia and in Turkey. So it's a diversity of view, and they are evolving with history. And then at one point they were saying no to democracy, and they changed. They were saying no to women involvement in politics, and they changed again. So I think that they are moving, and if we have to take an example, it's not to go to Iran, but also to go to Turkey, where you have people from Erbakan to Erdogan. People are changing, and there is nothing that can be said about, Islam is against democracy. This is, once again, these are slogans just to say, to promote an idea that in Arab world we better go for dictatorship. This is the way to get security and stability.
Understood.
And we have to challenge this view. And my point is here, I disagree with some of the leaders, even from the Muslim Brotherhood, by the way they are talking about Sharia and the way they are dealing with women. The only way for us in the future, if we want the true democratic processes, is to challenge the people, to say on this, as long as they abide by the law, they are serious about elections, and they are accepting the democratic processes before the elections and after the election, we should challenge them, let the people speak, and not torture them, and not to accept that coming from the West, people are going to lecture the Arabs in the way they have to do. I'm sorry to tell you what was said by Tony Blair is just unacceptable for someone who just promoted the war in Iraq to come now in the name of democracy to tell us that we have to support Mubarak.